Okay, now I don't get this question a lot, but it's on the back of a lot of people's minds, and I'd like to address it. It's a question of counterfeit artifacts. All right. Uh, I do get questions on how to tell between a real and a fake. Is there a way to tell, or, is there a guideline? Can I, as a flint knapper, can I recognize these things? Back in the day when I first started, I said only flint knappers could identify fakes from real because we understand how these flakes are made. But that's not entirely true. Okay. I've got to give credit to researchers who have done scientific tests and testing on flake removals, and they understand very well how the fracture mechanics works, and they understand that there's a difference between the materials used in modern times like metal and natural materials. There's also ways to see how much force was used, right, compared to natural materials. It gets involved like other aspects of flint knapping, but there are ways you can zoom in and look at the artifact itself and see how much force was used, what type of force, the size of the bulbs of percussion and all that. And that can correlate, and that can sometimes indicate if it's a modern tool. Of course, if you have a deposit of metal on the fake, then yeah, it's obviously modern. Now, the primary issue that I have with fake artifacts, other than it's dishonest to make them, is if I teach you how to use natural tools to make an arrowhead, and it ends up looking just like a real one, am I teaching you how to make a counterfeit item? Am I teaching you how to make a fake? And that's something I struggle with a lot. So I only do that on film. I make points with natural materials, but they're usually pretty simple if I'm not doing it on film, just to get certain techniques down, just to get my indirect percussion or baton percussion or pressure or something done. But as far as copying copying an artifact exactly, I try to do that on film so you can see that that is how it was created. Because if I make something off camera and it looks just like the real thing, and I end up giving it to somebody and they give it to somebody else, it may end up getting sold as a real one. Even if I mark it with something, or even if I identify it with my name or scratch something in it, or put a little patch of aluminum, if I scratch a little bit of aluminum onto it later on, those things can be removed and it can be sold for quite a bit of money, especially if I make paleo points. So as far as that goes, there is an issue. A lot of people get bent out of shape about flint knappers making things that look just like artifacts using natural tools to satisfy the demand for knowledge. They get bent out of shape because those things can be abused and eventually end up as fakes, and then we get confused between what's real and what's not, right? The good thing is there's a very small area of good in this aspect, but the good thing is if you make a point that looks just like an artifact using natural materials, and it gets confused later on down the line in 100 years for a real one, it was actually made with natural materials using techniques that are probably the same as the real one. So we're not losing much knowledge there. You see what I mean? We're not losing too much knowledge, or we're not getting confused too much. But it is dishonest to make fakes, of course, and I always discourage that. I had struggled with it myself. I don't consider myself a replicator of artifacts. I study flint knapping. I began flint knapping because it helped me to think clearly. I could do it with any mood that I was in at the time. I felt productive. It was just healthy for my state of mind. And I'll get into that in another video too. But as far as telling the difference between real and fake. It's getting to the point these days that it's very, very difficult unless you zoom in or have some access to scientific equipment that can either identify the location of where that rock came from. Because if you have a Clovis made of rock that's from Brazil, or no, let's say Australia, it's not a real one. But you need scientific equipment to see where is this material coming from. You just can't tell by looking at it. It's getting to that point where we have to bring out the big guns to try to figure out what's real and what's not. So that can be a problem. I hope I'm not contributing to the problem, but I might be. I will still continue to make items that look just like the real thing with natural materials, because I feel it's important in the study of archaeology, experimental archaeology, and general knowledge of how our brains have evolved over time and the tools that reflect our brain capacity. I think it's a very interesting study, and I am going to continue to do that. And this is a question that I don't get asked very often because it's kind of taboo, and it is on the back of everybody's mind. So I just wanted to give you my position on it. All right.